Change is painful. We all know that. So why bother with change if it's so painful? And the question on why bother begins and ends in my mind in capital markets. It's all about shareholders, competitors, and customers. And I think in the capital markets concept, we've all had a very recent and very real example of the power of an activist shareholder in Canadian Pacific. And I think that demonstrates just how demanding shareholders have become, and I think rightfully so. This is only the beginning of these types of activities in Canada, and I think our companies are going to have to get even more diligent than perhaps they have been to date. Competition is increasing. Our customers are getting more demanding. CP's new CEO recently announced that they shaved 2 days off the time it takes to move freight to the Port of Vancouver. Does this represent competitive advantage over CN, their major competitor, who also has track running to the port? Well, absolutely it does. Time is money. And if companies are running a productive shop, they want to see their suppliers running an equally productive shop. So there's absolutely massive competitive advantage and economic advantage in not only being first to market, but being best in your market. And at the end of the day, everybody's watching your ticker. It's really come down to that. So really, this is a game about survival of the fittest. And there's only 2 ways in my mind to be fitter. One is about generating new revenue, so go out there and get new business, make more money. The second is about optimizing the hell out of what you already have. And for years, businesses have been focused on automating their processes and removing manual labor. Today, I honestly can't think of a single function that runs in a business today that doesn't rely on some form of technology. I used to joke at CP, they didn't actually think it was really funny, but I used to joke that it wouldn't be conductors and locomotive engineers that were going to be running the digital railway. It was going to be IT. And in fact, it is IT, and it's actually not a joke. And that's why we look at productivity, speed to market, and greater automation. Moore's Law from 1970 basically said that computing power would double every 2 years. And Gordon Moore, who was a co-founder of Intel, said he expected that trend to continue for about 10 years. Well, 42 years later, that trend is still true today. Computing power is increasing at every 2 years at a factor of double. And I'm working with an SAP cloud service provider that has proven ability to run your environment for as little as a third of the cost of what you run it today. So all of these things indicate to me pretty powerful reasons for change and constant change. Process standardization with ERP systems, they're proving massive cost reductions through consolidation of literally hundreds of little applications. And on it goes with lots of great reasons to change, transform, and reinvent ourselves and our businesses constantly. So transformation, in my view, it's not a project. It's not a one-time I'm going to, well, hopefully it shouldn't be, sometimes it is, but it should be a constantly process of looking at yourself and looking at ways you need to continue to improve yourself to make yourself more competitive. But the problem is that we still, business people and IT people, after all these years, we actually don't speak the same language. And because we don't speak the same language, we have many years of failure to communicate well with each other, and actually, we actually don't even like each other sometimes. And I think that has to change. That's been a reality in my entire 25-year career in IT, where there's been some kind of antagonistic relationship between business and IT, for very good reason. But I think the CIO, as an agent of change, can actually help break down that barrier. So this is a cartoon called The Swing, and it actually originated in 1970, and it was updated in 2005. So it starts with what the customer described their requirement as being. And then in the second frame, it talks about, well, that's how the project leader understood it. And then this is how the analyst designed it. This is how the programmer wrote it. And this is how the business consultant described it. My favorite one, this is how it was documented. Okay, and here's how ops installed it. The swing's not even there anymore. And here's how the customer got billed. I love this. They got billed for a roller coaster and they didn't even have any fun. And here's how IT supported it. but here's what the customer really wanted. Okay, and how many years later is this? This is still true. 40 years later, we still see instances of this is what I wanted and this is what you gave me, and by the way, the bill is astronomical. So I think that we really need to start to seriously look at how we break down these barriers and start to communicate better with each other. So why the CIO is an agent of change? In my career, I've worked for a law firm, a consultancy, a bank, a brokerage, a telecommunications company, an international global retail and commercial bank, and a railway, so far. At Rogers, when I went there, the CIO of the cable business said to me, "Now, Heather, I know you've worked in capital markets, but the cable business is really complicated." And I thought, okay, all right, I'll accept that maybe cable is a bit complicated. And I very quickly started to understand the cable business and the wireless business and so on. And when I went to Canadian Pacific, I told that story to an executive at CP, and he laughed his ass off. He thought that was hilarious. Then proceeded to tell me, but the transportation business is very complicated. Okay? So as the reality, in my point of view today, is that if you're running an IT function in a company, you likely know more about the total business than any of those individual business areas do. Because IT is a digitized view of all of a company's products and services. We see all of the processes end to end. And we see all of the problems, the issues, and the opportunities. But the challenge in my mind comes in the things that we don't see. And one of the big areas, big gaps for us is strategy. We don't inherently understand where you're going. We know what you run today, but we need to talk and understand how, where you're taking your business. So this is a critical area. IT was front and center in driving the strategy, the overall business strategy at Canadian Pacific, and working with the various businesses. Suddenly, they had, for the first time, a shared understanding of where the businesses were going individually, but their strategies also started to build and integrate a bigger picture of how the entire company was going to move itself forward. They started to see for the first time how it all came together and how they could be helpful to each other. But they also saw how they could be potentially hurtful to each other, depending on how they chose to approach things. It became much clearer to them, for example, on why a standard ERP platform was a much better idea than 250 unique applications optimized for each business line. The same was true when I worked at Rogers. Melinda Rogers, the daughter of the founder, drove the first fully integrated business strategy, and she recognized that IT needed to be a strong player at that table. And they were then able to start the journey of eliminating that operating company silo that we used to see at Rogers, and eliminating those operating companies that often operated at cross purposes to each other, and start to optimize their products across their business lines in bundles and in discounting, and actually became highly effective in being able to do that well. So I believe we need to start to break with our past, and we need to start having better conversations with each other, sharing goals, having common goals, and driving the business forward through the innovative use of technology. And I think if we can do this, we might actually begin to like and respect each other a little better. So on transformation, a transformation is a transformation is a transformation. But I think there's a bit of a formula as what I've discovered. And I've done transformations at Rogers. I did an organizational transformation. At Barclays in the UK, it was modernization of IT and standards. At CP, it was pretty much everything had to be brought current and modernized. But in my experience, there's kind of 8 areas. And now these are 8 IT areas, but I would suggest to you that these are areas that are applicable largely to any business area or any company. That if you address these well, you're going to have a pretty optimized environment. So the first one George talked about a little bit, and it's one I feel really strongly about, and it's leadership. I believe very strongly in the tone from the top. I think the leader sets the tone, and I think the organization and employees watch leaders, and they want to emulate the behaviors that leaders are demonstrating. So the very first thing that I look to is, who are the leaders? Who are my leaders? Are they the right leaders? Are they the people that can help move us where we need to go and keep us there, okay? And in my experience, quite frankly, it's not the people that are there today. The people that brought you to where you actually do need a big transformation are probably not the ones that are going to take you to where you need to go. And that's a tough call to make. The second is relationship, and we've talked a little bit about that. I think relationship is critically important, and I think that IT needs to work equally hard and it's great that it's a 50-50 business and IT crowd out here, because we all need to start to know each other's areas a little better. I don't think you can be a business person and claim not to know about IT. You need to understand it on some level, and IT people, you need to figure out how to explain it better, okay? So I think we need to work that better. Strategy, so understand the business and drive the evolving underpinning IT. So we can't help you drive your business forward if we don't collectively understand the strategy and where you're taking the company. So I think those two working together is critical. Now, most often, business is the driver for an integrated strategy, but sometimes IT needs to lead the way, which was the case at Canadian Pacific. Architecture, so architecture, I have George's view of architecture as an enterprise construct, and it's really about architecture becomes something that is a result of understanding the enterprise and where you're driving your business. Standards increase productivity. So if a business requirements document looks the same and contains the needed information in the same format the first time, a technical person can translate that into a spec for a programmer, and they can get it done right the first time rather than doing a lot of rework. Process means consistently doing the same things the same way. Project managers need a methodology to follow. They need to follow that methodology, and they need to be audited for quality. Education is something I'm a real massive fan on. A lot of times, the first thing to be cut in bad times is the education or the training budget, and I've resisted that throughout the whole economic downturn. My folks at Canadian Pacific will tell you we actually ramped it up. And it's really important to have people that are skilled, that have the credentials, because they actually are more productive and deliver, okay? And again, these are, I'm talking about, this is a big transformation type thing, but these are things that once you've done them, you need to continue to do them, because they do have a massive impact on the company and its ability to deliver. And I think that the final one I want to talk about here is communication. And a communication program, one of the first things that I always do when I enter a company is I look at all the stakeholders, and I do that typical stakeholder analysis, like who are they, business people, customers, employees, what do they need, how often do they need, what forum am I going to communicate to them in, and how much am I going to give them. And I keep a rolling 12-month communication plan of all the things I'm going to do and when I'm going to do them. And I think, many of you as leaders understand how frequently those important communications items get thrown under the bus when a crisis hits. And I think it's important not to throw them under the bus, because it becomes much, much too easy to let that happen as a regular occurrence. So I keep a calendar, and I execute to that calendar. Doing things like community forums every 6 weeks, bringing business people in to talk about the impact of the partnership with IT on their business and so on. Quarterly updates. And one of the things that I've been really successful with, and I've implemented in a number of companies, is an annual review. And and I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. We implemented this on a quarterly update process where we produce a really nice little document, 2 or 3 pages, that talks about here's what we've collectively delivered this quarter. And then on an annual basis, we produce a review of all of the big wins that we've had. And this is where it actually starts to come together and starts to tie in. So this is the 2011 Canadian Pacific Annual Review. And it's a glossy brochure. It is produced for the entire company. Everyone wants to see their project showcased. And it brings together all of the things that are going on, so it keeps it cohesive. Like, here's what's going on with my methodology, here's the education. So let me show you some examples of what that might look like. This page is the marketing and sales view. So each department, and you'll see at the top, it says working together, okay? Departmental accomplishments. So this isn't about IT and here's what we've done for you lately, or about business, here's our great new win. This is about what we collectively delivered together. And it has an accomplishment section for each part of the business, so marketing and sales, operations, everybody's got their page, but it ties it to real business results. So you see the value to CP. So that's the so what. What did we do it for? Well, it delivered this business value to the company as a whole. And what are we going to do next? Okay, so this links it overall to strategy. So is this a one-off thing that we've done to improve productivity, or is this part of an overall strategy that we're going to be executing for the next few years? And it's a very collaborative document, so it highlights the collaboration, the partnership, and it reinforces in the minds of everybody that we're kind of in it together. And I think the final part on this slide is the pictures make it real. If you're an IT person, you work in isolation of really getting out and seeing the business. Like, there's lots of people in IT that have never been on a train, or have never been to a yard, have never worked in a call center, and so on. So these kind of things make it real for everybody. Like, this is why we're all doing what we're doing here. And then this is another example of a section where you might communicate, here's kind of what's going on. And this is an IT view. It doesn't have to be an IT view. This can be a business view. Here's the number of new customers we've received. Here's how we've improved their service levels. Here's how we're getting freight to the port more quickly than normal. So this really is, you can use it on a business, you can use it in IT, but this is an IT example. So this one, focused on accomplishments. So behind the scenes, there's a ton of work being done, and as George said, anywhere from 75 to 90% of the IT budget is spent on keeping things running. Well, what the heck is that money being spent on? Well, here's some examples of how we're spending that money. We're dealing with service desk issues. And guess what? Look at that trend line. We're actually getting better at it. So maybe it's not 90% this year, maybe it's 80, maybe it's 70, maybe it's 60. Here's what we're doing on application service requests. So all those little changes that you want us to do every day, here's how many we're doing, and here's how we're taking the backlog down. Well, that's a good trend line. It looks like that's good work. Here's the breakdown of that work across the business line. So we're doing a bunch of work for you guys in operations, and we're doing a bunch of work for you guys in marketing and sales. And I think the other piece that is, here's what we're doing for you. Here's our education stats. Here's how many people were trained. Here's how many people got certified in the past year. So this is a really good mechanism to communicate to the entire business. Like, here's all of the things that we're doing together. And of course, everybody likes to see their picture. So all year long, we're taking pictures. So as we're working together, as we're doing JAD sessions, as we're running scrums, as we're doing various types of things, we're taking pictures. Or here we're in some of these, we're watering a tree in India, where we're visiting our workforce offshore, which is also a critical component of your workforce. So these are like very interesting and innovative ways of making sure that you are communicating and keeping your change and transformation work front and center. So I want to summarize with change is inevitable, and it's really critical that we all become very good at it, because things don't stay the same. It's not, I joke about the role of the CIO used to be to guard the glass house, and it's not about guarding the glass house anymore. It's really about evolving and managing and constantly changing that. It's important to build better relationships with each other. And critical, we've been talking about it for far too long. We need to understand that most of us come into work every day, business people and IT people, determined to do a good job. So we need to kind of go into our relationships with a little better goodwill than maybe we've had in the past, and maybe put the past aside. We need to learn to speak each other's languages. It's not a badge of honor to say, I don't know anything about IT. And it's not a badge of honor to say, I'm an IT guy, I actually don't really care about business. Those barriers have to be broken down. We're all part of a team that actually contributes something to a greater good, and we need to figure out how we communicate with each other better. Focus on those top 8 or 10, whatever your top 8 or 10 are. They're probably a mix of what some of mine are. Mine are really great for IT. They might not all be great on a business transformation, but focus on them. It's not a project. It's an ongoing effort. Keep the work that you've done current. And if you do that, it actually works. We've seen massive improvements at Canadian Pacific in productivity and project delivery, on time, on budget, on our ability to do innovative things with cloud that we couldn't do before because we were so far behind. So this stuff really works. As you do it, keep it current. Don't let the good work that you've done slip and have to be faced with another big, expensive transformation in 5 or 6 years. And finally, and in my view, most importantly, you need to communicate. Figure out good ways to communicate. Your ways may not be my ways, but again, that rolling 12-month calendar actually serves to put a really great focus on the things you're going to do, and you need to do them and execute them. So thank you very much for your time this morning, and I hope you enjoyed my session.